In Mexico, they say it's a blessing to be born and to die in the same house. Frida Kahlo was born in Coyoacán, outside Mexico City, in a blue house built by her father. She would live there on and off for the rest of her life and die there just 47 years later. Her father was a German Jewish immigrant, her mother, mostly Indian, from Oaxaca. As a child, she and her younger sister Christina rebelled against their Catholic upbringing and disrupted the family with pranks and mischief. Christina would remain Frida's closest friend and also become her most bitter rival. Her mother, Matilde Calderón, was devoutly Catholic and deeply unhappy. When she was a young woman, she had been in love with a boy who committed suicide, and she had never fully recovered.
My mother was hysterical from dissatisfaction because she was not in love with my father. My mother arrived at hysteria through religion.
Frida's father, Guillermo KAHLO, was a photographer who documented the colonial architecture of Mexico for the government. He didn't like to photograph people, he said, because he did not wish to improve what God had made ugly. He and Matilde had 4 daughters, and Frida was his favorite. She was the most intelligent, he said, and the most like him.
Her father was a photographer, and she used to work with him, to accompany him. And when he had these attacks, he had, like Dostoevsky, he fell down on the floor. She had to put a handkerchief in his mouth because he era un epileptico. He had epilepsy. And she wouldn't say it to others, but she took care of him. And so I think she was aware of what danger means and how short life is and what we all do with our destinies and what we do with our lives and how we live them and how short time is.
When Frida was 6, a terrible pain in her right leg was diagnosed as polio. She spent 9 months isolated at home and survived with a limp. It was her father who gently showed her how to overcome teasing and loneliness with what was then considered unladylike behavior. With his encouragement, she swam, boxed, and wrestled.
When she was a young girl, she wanted to be a boy. She dressed like a boy. She was someone who was very, very original, very heroic, especially for Mexico, because for a traditional Mexican family to have a girl that dresses like a boy, that puts on a suit, that puts on a cap, that puts on a tie like she did, it must have been quite a shock, especially for that, I wouldn't say dumb mother of her, but a limited mother of hers, no? So I think she took many, many risks, and her life was a great, enormous risk, and that she was willing to live it that way, no?
In 1922, Frida became one of the Prepa's first female students. At age 15, she was suddenly immersed in the rigors and passions of the finest high school in Mexico City. She learned to read in 3 languages, fell in love with Whitman and Da Vinci, and dreamed of becoming a doctor. The school had been chosen as the perfect site for an ambitious, post-revolutionary experiment in public education. The plan was to cover the walls of public buildings with great mural paintings that would tell the newly rewritten stories of the country's history. Mexico's most promising painters were hired. The most prominent member of the syndicate by far was Diego Rivera. Frida was fascinated by Diego. She began to focus her pranks on him, teasing him when his models and girlfriends came, and stealing food out of his lunchbox. But her romantic attention was focused on the leader of the Cachuchas, Alejandro Gomez Arias. On a rainy fall day in 1925, while she was riding a wooden bus home to Coyoacan with Alejandro, Frida's life, as she had known it, suddenly came to an end. The bus was about to turn a corner when a trolley car collided with it. Alejandro described the accident. Slowly, the trolley pushed the bus. The bus had a strange elasticity. When the bus reached its maximum flexibility, it burst into 1,000 pieces and the trolley kept moving. It ran over many people. Frida lay in the street as a crowd gathered around her. She had been impaled by an iron handrail. It had entered on one side of her abdomen and pushed out the other. Inexplicably, her clothes had been removed by the collision, and a package of gold powder carried by a workman had been spilled across her bleeding body. Her spine and pelvis were each broken in 3 places, her right leg in 11. Her collarbone and 3 ribs were also broken, and her right foot was dislocated and crushed. The doctors thought it unlikely that she would survive. They had to put her back together in sections, said a friend, as if they were making a photo montage.
Is Alex alive? Frida, is he all right? He was hurt, but not terribly. How long have I been here? 3 weeks.
Frida had learned as a child to overcome infirmity with physical exertion. Now, forced to lie still, she needed a new way to be active.
Without paying much attention, I began to paint. My obsession was to begin again, painting things just as I saw them with my own eyes, and nothing more.
She made her first self-portrait for Alejandro. He had distanced himself after finding out about several infidelities before the accident. She wanted her image to linger in his mind.
Alex, though I've said I love you to many and have kissed or been given ribbons by others, at the bottom of my heart, I have only loved you. The portrait will be at your house within a few days. I beg you to put it somewhere low, where you can look at it as if you were looking at me.